and welcome to another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. I'm Joanne LaFlamme.
And I'm Chris Costa.
So Chris, what would you like to cover today?
Well, last week we started to talk about pre-press processes. I thought maybe this week we could look at a couple of proofing examples.
Sure, that makes sense. So why don't we start with looking at some proofing processes that we set up for particular size proofs.
Okay, sure, makes sense.
So let's take a look.
All right.
So to set up a proofing process, I'm going to go back into File Maintenance. And I'm going to go to the cost centers, and of course that's under the pre-press section. And I have a cost center here set up for proofing. You'll notice last week we set up a cost center of 1,000. So the next cost center, I want to keep my pre-press all in the 1,000 range, so I'm going to set up the next cost center for proofing under 1,100. And then under this cost center, I have a couple processes. Let's take a look at this first one. I have a proofing process set up for 8.5 by 11, so I'm going to modify that. So I gave it in the description its actual size, 8.5 by 11, and then I gave it its size here, 8.5 by 11. And again, we looked at these costing methods last week. In this case, since I know the actual size, 8.5 by 11, I know how much an 8.5 by 11 proof is going to cost me. So I can say a cost per unit. That way, each 8.5 by 11 proof is a specific cost.
Okay.
Okay. So that's what I'm going to choose here, and I'm going to make this $12.50 for each proof. And in addition, I'm going to bring in the material here that I just selected from my database. I have some proofing materials in here, and I selected the particular Fuji 8.5 by 11 material. And by selecting it here, it will come in automatically with the proof. And that's all I have to do. Save that. I also have one as an 11 by 17. Same setup. I put that in the description, I put that in the size, and I'm making this $14.50 per proof. And I'm bringing in a different material now, one that's 11 by 17. So let's go into estimating order entry. And I have this test estimate created. Let's copy that. And I'm going to go into my estimate, over to the processes. And under pre-press, I have my two 8.5 by 11. You'll see them here, my 8.5 by 11 and my 11 by 17. When I select that proof, it brings me to this screen, and I can enter the quantity. So if I wanted to do 1, 2, or 5 proofs, however many proofs I want to do, I can enter in the quantity.
Right.
I'll just leave it at 1. So we'll do one 11 by 8.5 by 11. We'll do one 11 by 17. You'll see the size comes in here. Just to show what it would calculate. And then I'm going to hit the calculate button. And you'll see in each case it brings in my production quantity of 1, my $12.50 cost, and then I have a markup in my job, so it marks it up to $13.75. And then it also brings in my material, one piece of the material at whatever cost the material was set at, marked up. Same thing with the 11 by 17. Brings in the cost along with the material.
Okay. Now that was a specific cost per unit. Do you have the ability to do some sort of price grid if the cost is going to fluctuate based on quantity?
Sure, because if maybe if you're doing 10 proofs or more, you might want to charge not $12.50, you might want to charge $10.50.
Okay.
Let's take just a quick look at that. If I go into standards here and go into pre-press and get out of my proofing process, and we'll go into the 8.5 by 11. Now I could, if I do that, I have to say use the cost grid. And then I can add a grid here, and I could say maybe at a quantity of 1, I want to do $12.50 each. But maybe at a quantity of 10, I'm going to charge $10.50 each.
Sure.
So that's how you would set the process up. And then if you enter 10 or more, it will do $10.50 each.
Right. Okay.
Okay?
All right. And you were looking at processes by size. What if I really didn't want to do it by size? Or I had a whole number of different size options?
Sure, you may want to set up 2, 3, or 4 of your common sizes, but then maybe also have one where you could vary the size on the fly for odd sizes.
Sure.
So let's take a look at that.
Okay.
So let me save this one. And here I have a color proof here for any size. Now the way I set that up is I used a costing method of cost per square inch. That way the cost is going to be based on the square inch of the proof.
Okay.
Okay. Now you'll notice here I didn't put any size in. And I'm going to make it 15 cents per square inch. So now my unit cost is based on a per square inch cost, not on a per proof cost. All right, so I'm going to OK out of here, and let's test that one out. So I'm going to add my process here. Now when this comes in again, I can change the quantity if I'm doing 1, 2, 4, 5, however many proofs. But I can also enter the size at that time.
Okay.
Okay. So it sees it brings in the width and the length field, and I can put in here, if I want to do a 28 by 40 proof, I can enter the size here. I can also, it brought in this particular material, but I can go in and pick a different one. I don't know if I have one of that particular size, but we'll pick this one. I can pick the material I want that would be appropriate for that size proof on the fly. Now when I hit calculate, it calculates the square inches and charges, that's a large sheet and probably a large cost, so it charges 15 cents per square inch for that proof.
Okay.
Okay, so it's
sense.
calculated on the fly.
Yep.
And then you'll see my material came in as well. Okay.
Okay.
Now we do have a couple other choices here. For you can also set up a proofing process based on the plate size.
Okay.
And that way Enterprise will look at the size of the plate that's attached to the press and make the proof cost based on that size.
Sure.
Okay, so let's take a look at that.
All right.
Actually, let's go into standards first and look at how it was set up. So I'm going to go into pre-press, select my color proof by plate size. And actually, that is just a checkbox here to use the plate size. I'm going to uncheck that for a minute. That's to use the plate size. So I don't have to put a size in here. Again, I do it at a cost per square inch, and I put in my cost of what I want to charge per square inch. I can attach a material here to come in automatically if I want to, or I can leave it blank and just pull it in on the fly. So that's up to you.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So let me save that. And let's take a look at that. So I'm going to add that. Again, actually, let me select my plate first. I noticed that came in at 0, so I must not have a plate selected. I don't have a press selected. So let's select my press. And let's go in and check the size of that plate. And that's an 11 by 17 plate. Okay, so now with my press selected, when I go and select the process and click OK and calculate, you see it calculated. It actually didn't bring in the size, but I knew I didn't have a press in there.
Okay.
It actually didn't bring in the size, but it still calculates based on that size of the plate.
Plates, okay.
So you won't see it there, but you can look
Sort of
at it in
behind
the
the
plate.
scenes.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And you see that it brought in the material. But again, if I wanted to change it, knowing the plate size, I could delete and change it to whatever size material I
Right,
wanted.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
And there's another option you may want to do for proofing is you might want to create a process which would create a proof for every page in the item that you're printing.
Okay.
So that you don't have to figure out how many pages it is and enter that quantity. The system will calculate it automatically based on the number of pages. So let's take a look at that.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back into pre-press. And I have my color proof per page. Now the way we set that up, again, this will be a cost per unit, and I'm going to do this one for a particular size. You could do it based on a square inch or some of the other methods we talked about. The key point I'm showing here is we can check this checkbox that says calculate quantity based on page count. And since I'm doing a particular size in this example, and it's going to calculate the quantity automatically, I can use this don't pop up option. That particular option there means I don't really have to enter anything. If the system's calculating the quantity based on the number of pages and the size is already entered in the process, there's really nothing for me to enter in when I select the process. So I'll set it up so it doesn't pop up. It's one less click you have to do.
Sure. Okay.
So I'm going to save this. And now let's add that proof in. And you see, when I added that, nothing happened. It's here, but there was no just added it. So let's hit it calculate. Now I've got my press, it's up here. So now I've got, My job had 2 pages, so it calculated 2 proofs, and it brought in 2 pieces of material for the proof
Okay,
without having to change anything.
excellent. Very good.
Well, that was a kind of an overview of some different ways you can set up proofing processes. Do you have any other questions?
I don't think so at this time. That was good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us for another episode of EPMS Tech Talk. I'm Joanne LaFlamme.
And Chris Costa?
Please look forward for more to come.